Hey, what is up, everyone? This is MusicTechHelpGuy, and Logic Pro 11.2 is here with some really cool new features, including an enhanced capture record mode called Flashback Capture that can capture record both MIDI and audio recordings, even if you don't press the record button. They've enhanced Stem Splitter with two new stem options, guitar and piano, and you can now also create submixes of stems. You can now search for and select any track using a shortcut. This is great for huge mixes where you have tons of tracks you have to navigate. And this is one of my favorite updates. There's now an option for long faders in both the mixer and the inspector. ChatGPT is now integrated into the notepad, so you can use it as an assistive writing tool, use it to proofread, or ask it musical questions. And if you do spatial audio mixing, there are some notable updates here as well, both to the Dolby Atmos plugin and the panners. So those are what I would consider to be the 6 main updates, and I'll break each of these down in more detail in just a bit. But as always, there are numerous bug fixes and under the hood improvements as well. There's also an update for Logic Pro for iPad. This is version 2.2, and in addition to all of those other updates I just mentioned for the Mac version, you can now learn MIDI in the iPad version. So you can now map your knobs and faders to effects and instrument controls, just like you can in the Mac version of Logic. Just a quick reminder before we get started, only about half of you watching are actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to see more Logic Pro tutorials and more music and audio production content, make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on all my new videos. And if you want to learn more about Logic Pro, check out my website, logicproguide.com. I've got full Logic courses over there, and I just released a brand new Logic Pro 11 Mixing Fundamentals course. You get ad-free videos that you can download, multi-tracks, and demo projects to work along with me, and purchasing a course is the most direct way to support the channel and keep this content going. Okay, so first up, let's talk about Flashback Capture. Flashback Capture is an updated version of capture recording, and it also replaces capture recording, and it allows you to recover MIDI or audio recordings even if you didn't hit the record button. So to show Flashback Capture, right-click or control-click up here and select Customize Control Bar and Display. Then from here, you can show Flashback Capture on the transport. And again, this replaces capture recording. So here's the Flashback Capture button. When it's grayed out like this, this means that there is nothing to recover. But if you click and hold on this, one of the options you'll see here is Flashback Capture MIDI in stop mode. I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. And what that means is I can capture record MIDI even if the playback is not rolling. All you have to do on your software instrument track is make sure that record enable or input monitor are turned on. So let's say I'm just playing around with a chord progression or something, and I come up with a particularly juicy chord progression, and I want to get that back. Okay, so I just played that in. You'll see that the Flashback Capture button is now shown. If I click that button, it will recover that performance. And of course, it's not going to be on the grid or anything, but you at least have the MIDI data. So if I wanted to, I could edit this to get it on the grid. Now, doing this with MIDI was already possible with capture recording in previous versions. However, with the new Flashback Capture, you can do this with audio as well. The one caveat is that playback does have to be rolling in order for this to work. However, you do not need record enable or input monitor to be on in order for this to work. However, I am going to turn on input monitoring just so I can hear myself sing in headphones. And I will also remind everyone I am not a great singer. This is more just as a proof of concept. Oh, baby, can't you see what your love has done to me? It's like I'm floating on a dream. In your eyes I find my peace. In your arms just sweet release. I'll never fall away again. Okay, so I hit stop. I did not hit record, and then I just click the Flashback Capture button, and there's that vocal take recovered for me. Now, you can take this a step further. If you sing over this part and you have input monitor selected, but you haven't hit record, it'll actually pack that captured recording into a take folder. In your eyes, I find my peace. In your arms, just sweet release. I'll never fall away again. I'll hit stop, hit the Flashback Capture button, and you can see it packed my second capture into a take folder. So here's take 1, and here's take 2. And you can think beyond vocals and MIDI with this. If you've got a guitar player that you're working with, and maybe they play a really cool lick or solo, and you want to recover that, but you weren't rolling, Flashback Capture is a great way to do that. Okay, Stem Splitter has gotten some pretty awesome updates as well, not just in its fidelity, but also in its ability to split more stems than before. So when you load up Stem Splitter, you're going to see that in addition to vocals, drums, bass, and other, you're also going to see an option for a guitar stem and a piano stem. So there's 2 new stem options here. Now, this is a pretty dense rock metal mix. It's got strings and piano, obviously lead vocals, backing vocals, guitar, bass, and drums. Let's see how well this is able to pick out some of these parts. Now, in order to find Stem Splitter, if you haven't already used it before, you're going to go down to Processing and then go to Stem Splitter. And then let's go ahead and separate all stems here. Give it a moment to process. Okay, so here are our 6 stems. We've got vocals up at the top.
Requiem for a stranger. I can't believe her.
Piano sounds like it's a little underwater, but it's picking it out pretty well. And then the strings are on the other track. We've got the drums. And then our guitar and bass. Now, like I said, this is a very dense mix, so I don't expect everything to sound perfect. The more that's going on in the mix, the more time-based effects, the more limited it is, the harder of a time Stem Splitter is going to have at getting a clean rip of these stems. But I'm pretty impressed. It's even picked out a really faint synth part in the chorus here.
For every sign that we've ignored.
All right, so let's try out a different song. That last song pushed Stem Splitter to its limit. Here's a mix that's maybe a little more simple instrumentation-wise.
In the stillness where shadows breathe, whispers echoes.
So let's go ahead and use Stem Splitter on this. We're going to separate all stems, but there is no guitar in this, so I can uncheck guitar. Technically, there's no piano. It's electric piano, but let's see what it places on the piano track. Okay, so here's the isolated vocal.
In the stillness where shadows breathe, whispers echo, secrets unseen, lost in the silence, a world unknown, where hearts breaking.
Drums. Synth bass. And synthesizers on the other track. And so it looks like on the piano track, it's added the electric piano.
Don't wanna let it go. I wanna see your face from dusk till dawn, until my heart explodes. Don't wanna let it go.
Yeah, it just does a fantastic job of capturing those vocals. Now, up here under the presets, I could choose to just create an acapella, which is only going to rip the vocal, but I could also choose instrumental. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a submix. So instead of ripping everything except for the vocals and then having to recombine them later to create an instrumental, all you've got to do is create a submix and then make sure that the vocals are not included. And you can do this in any way you like. You could do just drums and bass. You could just do the synths and pianos. And so that submix feature keeps you from having to split the entire song and then recombine them. So now I have an instrumental of the track in case the singer needs an instrumental to rehearse or practice to. And sure, there's still some artifacts in there that you can hear. That's to be expected. But the cleaner your original source, the better. So if you got like a really dry track, or you have a track that hasn't been mastered yet, it's like a pre-master, you'll generally get better fidelity with those types of tracks than you will a full mastered track. So in a previous update, they added the ability to search for and add plugins using a keyboard shortcut. And that shortcut was Control-Command-P. And you could search for any plugin. Maybe I want the API 2500. Maybe I want the LA2. You can just select the plugin from there and instantly add it to whatever selected channel you have. Well, they've expanded this search functionality over to tracks as well. So there's a new search command called Search and Select Track. And you can bring this up by pressing Control-Command-T. So this is particularly helpful when you're trying to dig for a particular track in a really dense mix. So let's search up kick, and here are my 4 kick tracks. Here's my kick replacer track. Just hit return there, and it opens up the drum stack and selects that kick track. Let's do that again, Control-Command-T. Let's look up GTR for guitar, and let's go down to the guitar solo. There's the guitar solo. Again, it opens up the lead guitar stack here and identifies that track for me. Let's do one more. There's some screamed vocals in this song. There they are. And so this is a really easy way to quickly locate and select tracks in really big mixes. So again, that's Control-Command-T to search and select track. Now, this next update is one of the simplest updates, but it's honestly one of my favorite. In Logic, you've always been able to switch between narrow and wide channel strips. But one of the issues with Logic's mixer is just how small and short the faders are. Well, in Logic 11.2, they've added long faders. So in the mixer, you can go to View and then go down to Long Faders. And now we have long faders. So I find this much easier to work with just on my eyes. I mean, we're basically doubling the size of the faders here. And there is a shortcut for this. It's Control-Shift-L. So you can quickly toggle back and forth between short and long faders. Just make sure that the mixer is in focus. And not only does this work in the mixer, this also works over here in the inspector. You just have to right-click or control-click and then select long faders. So those are long faders, finally available in Logic Pro 11.2. Okay, so this next one is pretty crazy. Apple has integrated ChatGPT into the notepad so that you can use it as an assistive tool for writing lyrics, composing. It can help you out with chord progressions. You can ask it questions. So I'm back to the first project I worked on, and I've got my lyrics up here. What I find ChatGPT helpful for is not necessarily composing your entire song for you or writing all of the lyrics for you, but rather an assistive tool when you get stuck on a word or a line, and then you take those ideas and you change them and you tweak them and you make them your own. I've never been of the mindset that just using AI for composition is necessarily a good thing, because the vast majority majority of AI music I've heard just sounds completely soulless and boring. So that's like not the goal here. The goal here is to use it as an assistive tool. So for example, let's say I don't like this line, "I'll never fall away again." Let's click on the ChatGPT button here, and I can ask it to, do something to this line, or I could just click the rewrite button and it'll give me an alternative for that line. So "I'll never fall away from you again." Okay. Maybe I don't like that one. Maybe I want more options than that. So let's select that, go to describe your change up here, and I'll say, give me 5 alternative lines for this that rhyme with the previous lines and fit the same context and mood. And I usually find when using ChatGPT, you have to be extremely specific with it. So now I've got these other 5 lines here that I can just copy and paste in here. And I can use these as like a starter lyric, or maybe I can grab a word or a little short phrase and incorporate it into what I already have. Now, if you take this to the extreme, it will rewrite an entire passage for you or expand an entire passage for you. So I can click rewrite and it'll completely rewrite, that phrase for me. I can choose to replace it, or I can choose to just copy the revision. I can also tell it to give me 2 more 3-line stanzas, and it'll do that. So now I have another idea here for, 2 more stanzas. Again, I wouldn't recommend just using it as is, but you can use it as sort of a starter. It's also a pretty cool learning tool, especially if you're still learning music theory. You can ask ChatGPT musical questions or ask it for musical suggestions. And if you want, it'll even explain its answers to you in detail if you're having trouble understanding the theory. So I could say something like, I have a chord progression of C minor 7, F minor, E, C sharp major 7 in the verse of my song. Give me 5 chord progressions that start on E flat that would work for a pre-chorus for my song. The key is C minor. And then it'll do that. It'll spit out some ideas for you to play around with. So I can copy these over into the notepad. And maybe I want to try out one of these. So let's go back to ChatGPT, add some additional extended harmonies to juice up this progression in the key of C minor. And the reason why I keep telling it what the key is because I don't want it to just randomly give me harmonies. I want the harmonies to make sense in the key of C minor. And so then it'll go into detail as to, what you can do here. So again, I don't want people to think that I'm condoning just like point and click composing without any thinking about your chords or thinking about your melody. That's not the point I'm trying to make here. The point I'm trying to make is if you're learning music theory, this can be an incredible tool along with the chord track and session players. And it can be an incredibly helpful like workflow tool to help you get work done quicker. So that is the new ChatGPT integration in Logic's Notepad in version 11.2. Okay, next up, let's talk about the updates to spatial audio in Logic 11.2. There's a few main updates here. Mainly, what you'll see is now in the Dolby Atmos plugin, instead of that menu that had all the different Apple renderer formats, you just have Dolby Renderer and Apple Renderer as your 2 binaural renderers. And then when you choose the Apple renderer, you'll get some additional options down here. Now, I have my AirPods Max on, so I can get all of the options here. But if you have created your own personalized spatial audio profile with your phone, where you hold your phone up and you turn your head left and right, it like scans your ears and fine tunes your setting for you. You can now turn that on and off right here. So I'll go ahead and turn that on. This is head tracking. If you are using certain headphones connected over Bluetooth, you'll be able to use this head tracking option. If not, if you're using other headphones, you're not going to be able to use this option. It'll actually just be grayed out. And the big update in the Dolby Atmos plugin is there are now 2 modes here. You have music mode and you have film mode. So in music mode, you'll be hearing the audio with the same headphone virtualization used by Apple Music. So this is great because you can really hone in on whether you want to reference your mix as it would sound in your spatial audio mix that is in Apple Music versus Apple TV. And that's what this film mode does. What this does is it applies the same headphone virtualization used by Apple TV for when you watch movie and TV in headphones. And you'll hear quite a difference too. In music mode, things tend to be a little bit more focused, whereas in film mode, things sound a little bit more diffuse and distant, which you don't want from music. Now, another big update to spatial audio that's going to be a huge time saver is on your tracks. You're going to see this extra little slider here. And what this slider is it's an elevation slider. Now, whether you're working in the 3D object panner, or if you're working in the surround panner, in these panners, you have to adjust the elevation here. But instead of having to open up the panner dialog, you can now just control these things here right next to the panner. And so this allows you to adjust your elevation without having to open up these dialogues all the time. So that'll be a huge time saver as well. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up all of the main updates to Logic Pro for Mac. I do want to show you one additional update for the iPad version, but before I do that, let me go through some of the more minor updates, the ones that you might miss. So one thing you'll notice, you might have already noticed, is in the upper right here, the master output or master VCA volume slider that used to be up here is no longer here. And that is because they have switched this over to be a meter for your stereo outputs. If you prefer it the old way, where the master VCA volume was up here, you can right click or control click up here, customize your control bar, go over to modes and functions, and down at the bottom, you can set this to be the output meter, which is the new setting, or you can set it back to the way it was before, where the master volume is shown there. And so remember, master volume controls the level of the master VCA. And the reason why they even did this to begin with is because a lot of folks who are new to Logic were using this volume control as sort of like their headphone volume control. And then when they pull it down or they pull it up, they bounce their track. That master VCA volume is going to be included in the bounce. And so it's going to throw off their bounce. And so they figured, you know what, let's just make it a meter by default. And if you want to change it back to the master volume, you can. So there's that. Another option here under modes and functions, if you click on sync, and then you'll see your sync options, you can click and hold on this, and you can switch this over to Ableton Link. Now, Ableton Link, support for Ableton Link was added, I think it was a few versions ago. But what is different now is that Ableton Link will now transmit MIDI clock. If you use Ableton Link to link up MIDI devices or different software platforms or different computers, that's going to be really helpful for that, especially if you use Logic in a live setting. The last sort of minor update is that there are 3 new sound packs. So to find these, you're going to go up to Logic Pro, you're going to go down to Sound Library, go to Open Sound Library Manager. 2 of these are under the sound packs, and these are the Dance Floor Rush and Magnetic Imperfections sound packs. And then under the producer packs, there's a new producer pack from Tosin Abasi. If you don't know who Tosin Abasi is, he's an incredible rock and metal and jazz guitarist who has a very unique playing style. And he's got his own producer pack now that's very guitar oriented. Okay, so I've got one more update to show you. This has to do with Logic Pro for iPad. The new version is version 2.2, and the update is that you can now learn MIDI CCs with any class-compliant MIDI controller. So I've got my iPad here. I've got an Alesis V25 MIDI controller here, and I've got 4 rotary encoders here. So as long as you have knobs or faders on your MIDI controller, you should be able to do this. And so not only does this give you an additional sort of sound design tool when using Logic Pro for iPad, it also gives you that tactile live control over instruments and effects in Logic. So I've got just a really basic musical example I've put together here. And let's find a parameter in here that we want to map to our MIDI controller. Yeah, so I think that filter envelope is a good option there. And to learn a MIDI CC, all you have to do is come up here in the upper right corner and click right here. Then select Learn MIDI. This will bring up a MIDI assignments dialog. And all you got to do is tap and move one of the controls. So I'll tap that filter envelope control. And then it's going to ask, move a MIDI control. So I'm going to move a control on my MIDI controller. And you can see there it's mapped it to CC20. And so when I move this, now I have control over that filter cutoff. Now, once you're done learning controls, you're going to click Stop Learning, and then you can close out that MIDI assignments dialog. And so now I can just use my knob here to control this filter envelope. Off screen, I've learned 2 additional effects controls, the wet blend and the feedback in the tape delay. So next, let me show you how to write this CC data into your project as automation. To do this, you're just going to pull up automation. You can also just press A if you have a keyboard to hide and show automation. And then you're going to change the automation mode to touch or latch. I'm going to set it to latch. And then all you've got to do is go back to the beginning or wherever you want to start at is start playback and move the knobs and it'll write in that automation. So let's go ahead and do that. And there we go. And now what I can do is I can just change the automation mode back to read. And then all of that automation has been written in on that track. And you can see my 3 used automation parameters here: filter envelope, feedback, and wet from the tape delay. And so that's how you can use this MIDI learn functionality along with these controller assignments for more advanced sound design and synthesis and automation in Logic Pro for iPad. Okay, so those are the new updates in Logic Pro 11.2 and Logic Pro for iPad 2.2. Let me know what your favorite update is in the comments below, and what updates are you still hoping to see in future versions. Don't forget about my Logic courses over at logicproguide.com. And if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. As always, thank you so much for the support, and thanks for watching.